Well, good evening, everybody. I'm John Four with George Washington University. Thanks very much for coming tonight to the lecture. I do want to mention one thing, please, before we start. We are recording the session, so if you might all check your cell phones and put it on mute or turn it off, or your Blackberries or whatever you use for that. So we would appreciate that. Thank you. So, and then to say, once we're done, there'll be time for question and answers. And so when it's time, there'll be people with wireless microphones. So if you want to think of your questions while Mr. Cook is talking, and then just raise your hand and we'll find you and go back and forth. So, all right. So I hope you enjoy the evening. Thanks again for coming.
Good evening. Good evening. That's what I like, a hearty response. Very happy to see a good crowd to come out for this. Over the last 40 years, two trends have dominated business development in the American economy and more generally in the global economy. The first was ushered in 1970 by Milton Friedman, and it gained power and stature over the course of that decade until it reached its heyday in the mid-1980s. And that was the notion of shareholder value. And the basic concept was that organizations are truly only responsible to the shareholders that they are answering to. Nobody else. Doesn't matter who the stakeholders are. Doesn't matter about the communities that they're embedded in. What matters is, are you delivering value to your shareholders? About a decade later, when I usually mark it to the beginning of this era as when Jack Welch took over at GE, we saw the real ushering in at the age of globalization. Organizations started talking more and more broadly and thinking more and more broadly about what their global footprint was. And both of these trends were important for defining business education and what corporations do over the course of the late 80s and 1990s. The world was shaken up a little bit with the accounting crises in the early 2000s, and we were shaken maybe to our core in the most recent fiscal crisis. However, there are some strands of good news that have been percolating over the course of a decade and have found their way into both academia and into the corporate boardroom. On the academic side, we have leading lights in people like Tim Fort, who's the director of the Institute of Corporate Responsibility and the Linder Gamble Chair of Business Ethics. This man is truly a visionary individual. All deans like to say that their faculty are stars, but I think Tim is more than a star. I think he is somebody who actually truly changes the way we think about certain ideas. And he is so committed to this issue of corporate social responsibility and corporate responsibility more generally that I think he's a true visionary in this space. His Institute of Corporate Responsibility has been sponsoring the Maxon lecture for the last 12 years. And that brings us people who actually think about these issues in engaging ways in the corporate boardroom. Now, tonight you're going to get to hear from somebody who I also think is a visionary person, not just on thinking about the embeddedness of business in society, but also in thinking about what it means to run a global corporation. And so it's a wonderful opportunity to be engaged in these kind of conversations and to welcome senior people from the business community to come and help us further our message in thinking about the relationship and the embeddedness of business and society and business and politics. And here we are in Washington, D.C. to have another exciting conversation on those issues. Now, to introduce our speaker, I would like, ladies and gentlemen, for you to join me in welcoming the president of the George Washington University, Dr. Stephen Knapp.
Thanks, Dean Guthrie. Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here for the 12th annual Maxon Lecture, an event that showcases the best practices in international business and corporate social responsibility. Events like this one are central to George Washington's efforts to engage the world from this nation's capital. They provide our students with unparalleled opportunities to witness the power of knowledge in action. and it's a special honor to have Ian Cook with us to deliver this year's Maxon Lecture. Mr. Cook is Chairman, President, and Chief Executive Officer of Colgate Palmolive. He joined the company in 1976, and before assuming his current position, held a series of senior marketing and management roles around the world. Founded more than 200 years ago as a soap and candle enterprise, today Colgate Palmolive is a global manufacturer and marketer of consumer products serving millions of customers worldwide. Under Mr. Cook's direction, Colgate Palmolive has been recognized as a leader in the fields of sustainability and corporate social responsibility by the Dow Jones Sustainability Index and by Goldman Sachs. I'm also delighted to note that Mr. Cook has a special connection to the George Washington University. His son, Andrew, who's with us today, received his bachelor's degree from the School of Business this past December. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ian Cook.
Thank you very much for those kind remarks, and welcome to this evening's lecture. I'm delighted and privileged to have been provided the opportunity to deliver this 12th lecture in the Maxon series, and frankly I look forward to a lively question and answer session after I have finished my prepared remarks. Before I get into them though, I'd like to put my comments in the context of the changing world we are living in, a world in which markets are becoming more global, more interdependent with one another, a world where the pace of change is accelerating, and in some cases accelerating in unpredictable ways, as we have seen with events over the last several weeks. A world certainly where speed and transparency of information is increasing, and in that case, in my view, a world in which values and the ethics that underpin them are more important than ever. And I think those forces, in the broadest sense, force us to consider what this means for companies and individuals. And my remarks this evening try to tie that together by looking at succeeding in a global marketplace. There will be three parts to the presentation. First, a little bit of background on Colgate to put us in context. Secondly, learnings we believe we have gathered from operating a global business for many, many years. And then, if you'll excuse me, the impertinence of providing some personal thoughts about what success might look like for individuals like yourselves as you advance your lives and your careers in our global world. So, a little bit of history about Colgate Palmolive. As was mentioned earlier, humble beginnings, downtown Manhattan, soap and candle maker. We bound into 2011, a sprightly 205 years old. We are today a truly global company, and indeed many of the markets we now operate in internationally, we moved into as a US company before the First World War, in many cases significantly ahead of our US-based competitors. Today, our products are sold in 223 countries, and there will be a test at the end of the lecture in terms of that list, and we have operations on the ground in 90 countries around the world. We do business in four basic categories. I think most known to you: oral care, personal care, home care, and our Hills pet nutrition business. We are about a $15.5 billion company, have grown over the last 20 years at a compounded rate of just over 5%. And in terms of our operating profit or EBIT return over that same 20-year period, have grown at a compounded 10% rate in terms of sustainability of economic performance in that changing global marketplace. From an investor point of view, whether you take the long-term view or a nearer-in view, again, we have consistently delivered solid returns. If you look at total shareholder return for a 25-year period, as you well know, this is share price appreciation plus dividend, you can see that we have outpaced handsomely both our proxy peer group and the S&P 500. If you look at 15 years, you can see the same trend. You're probably now getting an idea of how the following slides are going to look. If you look at 5 years, you see the same performance, and even over the 3-year period, which includes the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression, continued sustainable return to share investors in the company. And if you distill all that together in terms of after-tax return on capital, you can see that in the mid-30% area, the company is substantially ahead of both proxy peer group and the S&P 500. So that's a snapshot of the company and the kind of consistent performance over an extended period of time it has delivered. Now, how does one do that, and what do we learn from the actions taken over many years to deliver that? So today I will go through those key learnings. First and foremost, the vital importance of simple, well-understood strategy. In the case of our company, it falls into two parts. A very simple and well-understood financial strategy understood around our world. The strategy that focuses on increasing gross margin, because that gives you the most leverage in an income statement, reducing overhead as a percentage to sales in order to free up investment funds behind community and advertising activities to healthily grow operating return and the cash flow that goes with it. A similar, very sharp focus on a category strategy that I outlined before. We are in 4 businesses. We selected those businesses to focus on over 20 years ago because we like the growth characteristics and the gross margin characteristics of those businesses and felt we could expand and grow them around the world. And that's what the management of the company focuses on with no distractions. You need innovation to grow a company. Innovation is not just product. Innovation is business process as well. But in terms of building the sales of the company, you need relevant innovations that meet people's needs both rationally and emotionally to maintain the growth of a company. And when you're a global company, you have the opportunity to approach innovation in 2 ways. There are some innovations for disease conditions that are truly universal, and there are others that are much more local, and you have the opportunity to take advantage of both. In terms of the examples I will use this evening, the first is a global innovation, which is a product called Colgate Sensitive Pro Relief, which offers instant relief from tooth sensitivity when applied topically, and then long-lasting relief when you brush with it regularly. The condition is felt the same way by everybody around the world. You know when you've got it, and you know when you don't have it, and that allowed us to use consistent advertising to reach consumers wherever they were on the planet. And what I'm about to show now is a compilation of different advertising spots we used in different parts of the world, but as you'll see, in combination, it delivers the same message that we used everywhere.
We're here to see how people react when they try new Colgate Sensitive Pro Relief. Så vi kommer den här tanken när du upplever ilningar.
Drink this glass of ice cold water. Now give me your immediate reaction.
I don't feel any pain.
No siento nada.
Reacción inmediata.
Y esto es una mejoría instantánea. Wow.
Wow, that worked really fast and really well.
I just want to know how it works. Well,
sensitive teeth have open channels that let the hot and cold sensations reach the nerves.
Other sensitive toothpaste desensitise pain over time. Colgate Untitled Pro Relief fills 2 channels to instantly relieve sensitivity.
Fue un minuto nada más en el que me puse el producto y me siento perfectamente bien.
Estoy impero. Qualche doppione mi vuole che io
New Colgate Sensitive Pro Relief for instant and lasting relief. Prove it to yourself.
So, global innovation, same advertising, same disease condition. Alternatively, you have the opportunity to take advantage of local insights. And in India, as in other parts of Southeast Asia, you will find salt used to deal with mouth pain and mouth bleeding. And this provided us an opportunity to introduce an active salt toothpaste in India and other Southeast Asian countries. And let me show you the Indian ad for that product.
टूथपेस्ट में नमक हाँ कोलगेट एक्टिव सॉल्ट में नमक है इसका अनोखा फॉर्मूला अंडे के कीटाणु को हटाए ताकि मसूड़े बने स्वस्थ और दांत जड़ से मजबूत स्वस्थ मसूड़ों के लिए कोलगेट एक्टिव सॉल्ट टूथपेस्ट कोलगेट एक्टिव सॉल्ट कीटाणु से लड़े मसूड़े स्वस्थ बनाए कोलगेट डेंटिस्ट का सुझाया #1 ब्रांड
I thought that was an appropriate ad to use in a media center. And the final thing is, particularly when you think about emerging markets, it's important that those innovations are delivered at price points that consumers can afford. And you will find in many of the emerging markets around the world, we use low-cost packaging like sachets to allow us to provide toothpaste at the price of pocket change for consumers who are husbanding their resources and buying on a daily basis. And as you can see in the larger picture, these sachets are displayed in strips in some of the down-trade mom and pop stores in those countries. So global innovation, local innovation, and making sure it's available to consumers who want to take on that new behavior. Next, strong relationships. This is somewhat motherhood and apple pie, but it is something we have deployed consistently around the world, whether it's with consumers, retailers, the suppliers whom we build strategic partnerships with, the dental or veterinary professionals who recommend and explain our products to consumers, often when they're taking on a new behavior, and obviously the very different government and regulatory agencies that you encounter in managing a global business. Continuous improvement. We believe that businesses are built by doing a little bit better every year rather than this swing for the fences, I guess, to use the baseball analogy. And perhaps the single biggest area of continuous improvement we have focused on as a company is in gross margin. A gross margin that over a period of 26 years, we have increased from 37% to basically 60%. And it's that focus on year in, year out, delivering a little bit better gross margin, which has allowed the investment to maintain the consistent top and bottom line growth of the company. Very important, we believe, to managing a global business is the active leadership from global leaders in that business. If we take a look at our company today, we have 2 chief operating officers that govern our operating business around the world. As you can see, one is Venezuelan, 7 years experience with Colgate, 21 years before that, several languages, and the other is French, with a like years of experience, all with our company in different parts of the world, and again, speaking several languages. And then you walk around each of our operating divisions. Our Latin American division is run by a Brit, 28 years with the company, 3 languages. Greater Asia, run by a New Zealander who holds 5 languages and 27 years with the company. Africa, Middle East, Belgian, a like experience base, multiple languages, and our North American business, run by an American, again, over 20 years experience, and speaks 2 languages. Now, that's very interesting to put on a slide, but the reasons it is important are the following. Oh, Europe. We have another Frenchman in Europe who is nearly 40 years with the company. Another 40 years, he'll get it right, and he speaks 4 languages. But the importance that global leaders deliver to an organization, in our view, is as follows. Number 1, they master what they do. They don't just learn the job, they define the job, and they take experience from different parts of the world to each new responsibility that they have. They have an enterprise-wide view, and we have built their careers to give them that view, so the decisions they take for geographies that they cover take into context the enterprise-wide strategy. They have lived and worked in cultures outside their own. There is a big difference between living in and absorbing a culture than visiting a culture, and we have for many years put a premium on that experience set for our executives. They understand the power of teams locally and globally. They know how to engage, they know how to align, and they know how to direct. And they are excellent communicators. Much strategy is lost in poor or unclear communication, and great global leaders have strong communication. So it's those skills that leadership diversity brings to a global organization. And vitally important, and always has been vitally important to our company, a values-based culture underpinned by the highest integrity. Culture, in the end, is what drives a company. And you could say that culture is how we get stuff done around here. Good culture drives consistently good results, which reinforces good governance, and the good governance pays back to the culture. And as I said, that culture is underpinned by the highest ethical standards. And we operate a program where we communicate to our worldwide organization 3 precepts of ethical governance: learn, act, and speak up. Learn what it means in terms of our code of culture and the management behaviors we endorsed. Act when you see something that is inconsistent with that, either with your peers, your subordinates, or your superiors, and speak up to ask for help and support in addressing situations. Every year we convey to our worldwide organizations communication around living our values, within which ethics sits. The values of the company are these 3 and have been so for 30 years. Caring for people in the company, for the consumers we serve, and the communities in which we live and operate. Global teamwork to get the best results on a global basis, and the continuous improvement that I exampled earlier with the gross profit. But that living our values communication is translated into all the local languages we have around the world. It's over 40 today, and we bring training around values and ethics to all 38,000 employees around the world, either face-to-face or online, in each local language, and certify that people have conducted and understand the training, and we repeat that annually and for any new employee in the company. And finally, whilst one always is rooted in the present, we believe we have learned that a focus on the future is vital to maintaining the consistency of performance over time. And in our world, if you take a step back, sustainability, I think, is the frame to look at that. We brand it internally as giving the world reasons to smile. And we look at it quite broadly. We look at it in terms of people, again, people in our company, people we serve, and the communities in which we live. Performance, because economic performance consistently delivered underpins all of this. And planet, in terms of what we use to generate our business and the waste we create in managing it. So these are our three areas of focus. And one example I'd like to show this evening has been durable for us over 15 years and is a community program that we believe passionately in.
Good oral health is something every child deserves. Sadly, for millions of children, dental care is not always a certainty. Colgate Bright Smiles, Bright Futures is working to change that.
60 to 90% of children around the world suffer from tooth decay. We're very proud that we've been able to reach a milestone of over 500 million children in 80 countries around the world.
Colgate people in each country partner with dental professionals and local educators.
Working with the Ministry of Health and the education we're able to get in schools, Bright Smiles. How to take care of their teeth. And at the same time, it begins to make that child feel good about themselves.
Available in 30 languages, the content is designed to entertain and inform children and their families about why it's important to brush.
Working in the community, we're spreading the message that oral health is important. Bright Smiles, Bright Futures includes mobile dental vans. These are dental offices on wheels.
These traveling clinics visit underserved areas where access to dental care is limited. We most recently expanded Bright Smiles to help Cambodian children and their families.
Colgate is dedicated for the long haul to continue this initiative. I'm very proud of what we've achieved so far. It allows us to give back, and I think that's the most important thing that Bright Smiles, Bright Futures does.
This for us is an example of where community meets business and both prosper. So those are the learnings we believe we have garnered over the international journey that we have undertaken and what it takes to succeed on the business side in that fast changing global marketplace. And I think it's sort of summed up perhaps in the market share progress we have seen that underpins the financial results that I showed you in the beginning. This is a global toothpaste share, and it compares our market share globally at over 44% with our three principal multinational competitors. And of course, it is our intention to keep moving that share up as the years unfold. So those were my comments on the company and what succeeding means from a company point of view. Now I'll turn to my impertinent section with some observations, personal observations, on thoughts about your success in that global marketplace. I guess in the end it boils down to two things. It's what you do, what we do as individuals, and it's how you get it done. In the area of what you do, I think simplistically, in whatever field you're in, it's about delivering results that are helpful to that field and advance that field consistently. And do so in a way that demonstrates managing with respect. It's as important how you get it done as what gets done. And again, in our company, this is how we define managing with respect. Every year, when people go through their annual performance review, they are rated on these managing with respect principles, and if they receive a negative rating, it negatively affects the salary increase they get in the following year. So we put pay for performance against a behavior that is managing with respect. More broadly, in the area of how do you do it, my observations would be these. Keep calm under stress. A lovely quiet Monday and a screaming Tuesday does not lead to an aligned organization or promote good workplace behavior. So I think folks that are successful manage to keep calm, whatever the stress is, around them. I think people that are successful and good leaders in general are optimistic and resilient. They face the truth, but they are optimistic that they, as individuals and the organizations they work within or lead, can work their way through it, and they have the resilience to deliver against that. Make personal contact. In human terms, that's get out from behind the email, that's get out of the office, and that's connect with human beings. People have different styles. There's no one cookie-cutter style to do that, but it's important that people make authentic, personal connection as they proceed in life. I mentioned it earlier with those global leaders, but communicate well, and sometimes communicating well delivers a little bit of the unexpected, and here's an ad that we think communicates well.
Okay, what color is the grass? Green. Good. What color is my sweater? Red. What color are my teeth?
No matter how great your smile is, don't you wish it could be whiter? Now it can. Introducing new Colgate Whitening Toothpaste. It has baking soda and peroxide and an extra ingredient for healthy teeth that are whiter.
Let's try this again.
For whiter teeth, new Colgate Whitening.
Simple, but it communicates well. And I'm glad that got a laugh, because my next point is that I think it's important to have a sense of humor and not take yourself too seriously. Life will go on without us, trust me, and a sense of humor can bring great energy to a group and diffuse tensions. Let's see whether you think this delivers.
It's easy to gain a little weight without really noticing. The same is true for your pets. Just a couple of extra pounds on them can lead to diabetes, arthritis, and heart disease. Visiting your veterinarian is the best way to help your pets live long, healthy lives. Go to petfit.com to learn more, because a little extra weight is a big problem.
You have to say it's cute. So finally, I guess my closing thought would be a challenge. And the challenge is get outside yourself as you push yourselves forward. Definitely get outside your country and get beyond your culture, so you can bring broader experiences to make you a stronger professional and a broader individual, because a global world today needs global leaders. So those are my prepared remarks, and now I would be delighted to turn the floor open to questions. There's a hand up here. There's a microphone.
Hi, I'm Akshay Gandhi. I'm a freshman in the School of Business. And I would like to know, if you're a mid-sized firm with the capacity to, let's say, produce or manufacture, how would you approach an international corporation to develop a strategic partnership?
I would pick up the phone. I think, first I would say if you're looking for that partnership, one would hope it's grounded in a strategy that shows benefit to both sides of that partnership. In other words, there would be an idea and there would be a plan. And then I think the simplest way in life is to pick up the telephone on the assumption you have done your homework and contact the prospective companies and ask for a meeting and have a discussion about the plan with honesty and transparency. And if the lawyers insist, put a confidentiality agreement around it, but I think you talk.
Thank you.
I may have to start throwing the microphone, I think.
Hello, Mr. Cook. My name is Usama Khan.
Ian. Only my children call me Mr. Cook.
Ian, okay. First of all, thank you for coming to speak to us today. I thought your lecture was very interesting. I have some numbers. Business Week in 2009 reported your salary as being $1.25 million, but in addition to the stock options they say you have, as well as one-year awards, the total compensation comes to something like $17 million. And I did a few quick calculations. That comes to between like $20,000 a day. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about, like, as a CEO, what do you do in like one day that's worth like $20,000? It just sounds really cool. A cool job to have.
I make very important speeches at universities that cost less than your tuition. That's a loaded question, and frankly, a little bit of a cheap shot loaded question. I could take you back to the performance of the company. I could show you data that would show my return, if you will, at the low end of my peer group. I could tell you that I have not taken a salary increase in over 3 years, and no one's going to cry in their beer. So I think what one would say is that the performance of the company speaks for itself, that investors in our company have taken a very healthy return, and more than that, as I tried to demonstrate, the purpose that we try and deliver to communities around the world means we are bringing benefit beyond the economics to people's health and well-being. And you can rest assured that I invest every ounce of my being in trying to make that happen. And if that doesn't make all of the people happy, then so be it.
Thank you very much.
Well.
Hi, Ian. Andrew Seal. I'm a first-year MBA. Thank you for speaking. I know you just wrapped up a large sustainability effort. There's an 8-year sustainability effort that just wrapped up, from my understanding.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
There were some pretty large goals that were met, including reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, waste, and reduction of water use. I just kind of wanted to get a sense for what's the big next step for you all and what direction you're taking that.
Well, can I go to that? I don't know where you're going, but I hope it's the right place. So this is perhaps a bit broader than that because it was a broader sustainability piece. We have lots of backup sections in our investor presentations which one can call on in response to questions like that. So I talked earlier about this piece. This defines how we define sustainability in the broadest terms within the company. I assume everyone has read that. We deliver it through products, and we deliver it for caring for the environment. And this is, these are the goals we set for ourselves, and in each case we exceeded the goals. This was particularly important, we believe, in the world we're in. And in these particular goals, we will be announcing new goals precisely 6 weeks from today at a global meeting, and we will have every bit as challenging goals going forward for the next 5 years. So I guess the answer is it's more of the same. We have been very deliberate in our manufacturing strategy to accomplish this. We started maybe 15 years ago with over 100 factories around the world, 130 something. We have today less than 60 servicing that $16 billion company. We have equipment that is allowing us to produce more tonnage of our product and using 30% less water and putting out 30% less water rate. So when you reduce the number of factories you have around the world, your ability to deploy efficient capital is much higher because you have less places to go, and that helps you deliver these kinds of numbers. So it'll be more of the same with a goal for the next 5 years through 2015. I think earlier mention was made of the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, but we also have the same kind of goals on people, not just on environmental emissions. This, I hasten to say, is not a reduction in the number of Colgate people. This is a reduction in the lost day rate due to accidents that we have delivered over many years. We are now in the top quartile of all companies that submit their data in this space. So we do it in the environmental area, and we do it in the area of our employees. And in that same employee space, you can see the kinds of recognitions we get for programs beyond basic health and safety, but in terms of advancing people's ability to be leaders, and indeed the company being a best place to work. So the answer is new goals, as ambitious, next 5 years. Go on the internet 6 weeks from today and you'll see what they are. What else?
Hi, my name is Allison. I'm a sophomore in school business. And with your financial information before, you showed continued growth with Colgate Palmolive, especially over the past 3 years when there was kind of negative growth or not as much success with your competitors. Would you say this is based in your values or other parts of your strategy? What would you say the strongest reason for this?
Yeah, the older I get, the more I believe in culture. And I think culture is discriminating and determines the consistent strength of a company. It takes a long time to build a culture, a robust culture. It takes one thoughtless act to destroy it, and is very difficult to recover both internally and externally if you do destroy it. Now, the culture needs to be supported by a strategy that is smart and execution that is as flawless as you can make it on the ground around the world. But if I had to force rank, I would say that a culture is what drives a company's ultimate performance. It permits brilliance or it permits mediocrity or worse.
Hi, I'm Andrew Tedeschi, an MBA student here. My question is, you mostly work with consumables. However, you also have a big emphasis on sustainability. Where do you see the company in 20, 30, 50 years from now when you have to maybe switch from consumables to reusables? How is that transition going to happen? And is that a likely future for us?
Yeah, I candidly, in that era, I would say anything's possible. I see a couple of intersections. One intersection I see is community with business. You take that Bright Smiles, Bright Futures program that I showed you, and you look at a Facebook, there's no reason we couldn't sign up 600 million people to work with us in country on that kind of a program, with Colgate providing the ammunition to get that done. So I see an intersection between the way business is done and the way communities operate, may be facilitated by our digital world, Facebook being the example of today. On the product side, I see no end of opportunity. Not everything in life can you ultimately predict will be reusable. And I think our view is we have steadfastly avoided the notion of green marketing, if you will, to tout an idea because it has currency today, but it doesn't change the fundamental underpinnings of your sourcing, your packaging, or your product strategy on the rest of the business. So our approach has been more holistic. And indeed, you see new technologies becoming available every day that can certainly make packaging reusable, that can certainly reduce waste, and we will mine all of those technologies to the fullest extent we can, so long as it's real, it's not just green marketing. So I wouldn't say anything is off the table, and we keep a very open mind as to how far ultimately one could go.
Hi, my name is Nick Burke, and I'm a freshman at the School of Business. And my question is that over the last decade, there have been large leaps in the tech industry. And with a company like Colgate, which is so much based on your products that have been expanding over the last 100 years or so, I would say, are you still looking for innovation in your products, or are you looking to aim for the next new product? Are you trying to still expand? What is what is Colgate's main focus?
Crest is an enemy.
Yeah. What would you say Colgate's main focus is looking forward into the next decade?
Well, it sure as hell isn't Crest. It's all of the above. I think, in the end, I know this sounds awfully trite, but you have to be driven by the consumer. I mean, that's what the tech guys are doing today. They're responding to what the consumer says they want, because the consumer's now ahead of workplace technology and leading technology. So you have to listen to the consumer. Setting up inward-looking goals to only have the next big innovation is a mistake. We have a product called soft soap. It is a simple liquid hand soap that you pump. We have a version that has a 3D character inside the bottle. This is not Phi Beta Kappa science, believe me. It happens to be patented, and mums love it because when the little kids come in from the yard, they think it's cute, so they wash their hands. As far as I'm concerned, that's innovation because it serves a need for consumers. And I'm just as excited about that as I am about the Pro Relief, which actually is patented world-beating science in terms of sensitivity relief. So the answer is you should deliver to the consumer what the consumer either needs and can't define or expresses a desire for. And as I said earlier, innovation is not just in product. Innovation is how you engage with consumers, and innovation is how you run and operate the company. And we have found over the year many inventive examples of changing the way we operate to accrue benefit. And certainly, I just came back from the West Coast visiting many of the digital companies out there. There are limitless opportunities to use some of those capabilities to engage with consumers both rationally and emotionally. So the simple answer to your question is all of the above. Most importantly, you have to keep an open mind and you have to stay curious and candidly change your mind if the facts show that you should be changing your mind. Many businesses struggle because they create a model and then they are unprepared to go outside the model, even if the world is changing around them.
Good evening. My name is Hunter Thomas. I'm a sophomore in the business school. I just had a quick question. You spoke a lot about the values and the culture and how important it is to have strong values to create a strong culture. I had a question about in all these new emerging markets you're able to take advantage of across the globe. Have you had any difficulties, having those values be adapted with all the employees, or in terms of any political issues as you enter different markets, and how you overcome those, and what kind of things you predict could happen in the future?
There are certainly cultural differences country by country, and indeed there are some regulatory labor governance issues that you have to manage. But in the end, ethics are ethics, and right is right and wrong is wrong. And whether it's ethics in general or whether it's the quality, for example, that we seek to put into our products, we have one standard for the world. There's no kind of, we'll give them a pass because it's a little bit early in their development. So our standards are universal. How you communicate them with the appropriate cultural sensitivity is something we do adjust. I showed you a simple language change. Now we've got these things in over 40 languages, but they're delivered differently. In some cultures, an online training or communication program would be uncultural. And so we make sure it's person to person, and the delivery can be different country by country. So yes, you navigate the culture in terms of how you execute it, but you don't change your standards in terms of either ethics of behavior or operating quality for the company.
Hi, My name is Courtney Thompson, and I work for a nonprofit here in DC. And we are always trying to strategically reduce our overhead, and I noticed that was one of your main points in your presentation. So I was wondering if you had or could share any examples of reducing overhead at Colgate.
Yes. One I've already talked about, and that is we now operate many of what I would call the support services globally. So, you know, if you go back 20 odd years ago, Colgate, no different to many companies, was basically a feudal empire, right? The King of France did what the King of France wanted to do, and if the King of England thought it was a good idea, they probably copied. And each of these general managers had their own factory, their own human resources group, their own finance organization, totally self-sufficient. And as the world changed, that became impractical. The EU arrived and hopefully will stay. And that meant we started to source our products now more regionally than we had done before. Now we have moved our global supply chain to a global organization. So we source toothpaste from Colombia in China. We source toothpaste for the US from Vietnam, and from the US to countries outside the US, because that's more efficient from a global point of view, and we have been able to reduce the number of factories we have. We have done the same with research and development, managed as a global resource. We have done the same with information technology, now managed globally rather than having separate IT groups in each of our countries. Now, we've now gone beyond that to what I would call this notion of shared services, which is certainly not a new concept. And one of the most recent examples is 6 months ago in Europe, we opened a shared services center in Poland. And that shared service center is managing the back office financially for 27 of our operating units in the greater European area, West and Eastern Europe. That has reduced the number of administrative folk we have at the subsidiary level, but gives our operating folk better quality of information. And interestingly, when you aggregate all of that stuff, you start finding efficiencies in the aggregation that you can take kinks out of some of the locally developed processes and get even more efficiency. So my two answers would be globalization of what is not essential to win on the ground, and winning on the ground in our case is converting consumers and building market share. And then the idea of grouping services so you can get better quality talent to deliver better quality human resource, finance, legal services to a group of countries rather than, again, having those resources in the countries. So they have been two aspects of our strategy.
Hi, my name is Max Polinsky, and I'm a freshman here in the School of Business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I speak on behalf of all of us here. If you would mind sharing your personal story of how you went from a college student, like all of us here, to one of the top executives in one of the most prestigious companies.
Slow down, slow down. Yeah. Actually, I didn't think that would be asked, but I had done a presentation somewhere else about that. Do you have the slides or whatever it's called? Yeah, so this is the beginning. As you could probably tell by the accent, I joined in the UK in the marketing organization. Marketing was then fashionable. I'm not sure where it sits on the pecking order these days. And then I moved to New York. It was interesting because, you know, I had started again at a time when subsidiaries were single entities. We had all of the resources we needed. And when I moved to New York, we had just started a global strategy group. We were just beginning to say, hang on a minute, Colgate is a worldwide name, and we better put some buffers around it so that we know strategically how we're going to manage that name for the next 50 or 100 years, that we're not going to let general managers put the Colgate name on toilet soap, even though it would sell well, because Colgate is an oral care equity. So for me, this was an opportunity, A, to get to the headquarters, and I met people that I worked with for the rest of my career, and B, back to that point I made on global leaders, started to take an enterprise-wide view in terms of how we should think about our brands and the way we did business around the world. 3 years and broke. I left New York, went to the Philippines. Was there 3 years. I guess one way of characterizing it is I was there for a revolution and 5 coup attempts, which was an interesting social journey. I was watching it on CNN like everybody else. But I learned a new culture. And I learned that people don't operate to Western standards everywhere, and that you have to be attentive as much to what people don't say as what they do say. And you have to start to form a view on body language as people express themselves in different ways in different rooms. And you have to take yourself away from the natural instinct to engage in a pretty forthright conversation if you know that's going to close down a room. Or you need to start meetings 10 minutes earlier to get people to arrive on time, which was my first big frustration. You need to start thinking differently to get the best out of people in different cultures. And I guess the learning I took away from the Philippines is one of the biggest skills an executive must fight to keep is an ability to listen. It becomes too easy to stop listening, particularly the more senior you get in an organization. You get fixed in your ways, people try and keep, well, let's not bother him with that. So you have to become very attentive to listening. And from the Philippines, apart from the great business experience and the ability to see Southeast Asia and enjoy a great culture and learn new histories and have our kids see that. In fact, Andrew was born in the Philippines. Charlie, the eldest, was born in New York. Was that single thing, the recognition that the fact that cultures are different doesn't mean they're any lesser or they have to conform to the way we were educated or brought up, and listening was the biggest thing I picked up from the Philippines. Then the Dominican Republic, where I ran, that was my first general manager assignment, heading up the Dominican Republic and Haiti, which I have read more about than any other place on earth, which has always been saddening for me. But again, a different culture. And there, now you're responsible for a company. You're no longer responsible for a function. It's not about how smart you are. You have to think about, are the bathrooms clean in the factory? How does the trade union feel? Are our bonuses fair? Are our work conditions fair? What's happening outside the workplace that one can influence? And you really started as a general manager to feel your way in to community, recognizing that a company is bigger than the business it produces and sells. Then to Fort Collins, Colorado. I had never heard of Fort Collins, Colorado. Frankly, I don't think I'd even heard of Colorado. One of the most beautiful places we ever lived. This was a business we had acquired from the outside and was an opportunity for me to integrate 3 disparate businesses we had around the United States in one location. And in order to do that, I had to go through the pain of restructuring 2 companies. And when you have to look people in the face and say, I'm sorry, we're closing down the business here because we're consolidating it somewhere else because that's more strategically correct. If ever, as a human being, that doesn't pain you at whatever stage in career you're at, you should get out of the business because that should always pain you. And it led, for me, an enormous learning about preparation and sensitivity. Even if the news is bad, people deserve a fair accounting and they deserve human and personal treatment, and you can't hide behind other people. Then back to Denmark. I was in fact responsible for the Nordic group of companies, so managing disparate geographies, and of course I went in with a view that it's Scandinavia, and you learn that actually Danes and Swedes have history too, and the Danes are the Danes and the Swedes are the Swedes and the Norwegians are the Norwegians. And, but it was a multi-country experience and an opportunity to try and bring different cultures together to create the best for this grouping of geographies. And then back to New York, which is where I have been since. I headed up marketing in the US company, then ran the US, then the US, North America and Europe, and then kind of the rest of the world, I guess. So that was the journey. Great personal learning. I believe great growth for our kids. Met some great people along the way. Some of them are here this evening, and wouldn't have traded it for the world. But if you don't go into those experiences with a curiosity to grow personally and professionally, if you're only doing it because you know the organization you are working with or for wants you to tick that box, don't do it. I would encourage you to do it. So that's the, I guess, the Cook's tour. So, what else?
Hi, my name is Tom. I graduated from the business school here. And since I did, I've spent a lot of time in China doing sourcing and manufacturing. I've seen a lot of MNCs turn a slight blind eye to the standards, if you will. A couple questions ago, you answered and mentioned that Colgate has one standard for the world. And I've seen a lot of MNCs not necessarily have the same standards when they're producing product in China, both as it relates to environmental sustainability and social sustainability. So again, your one standard for the world comment, it was more in the context of the products that you sell, the quality, and that makes sense. But do you have the same standards for the world as it relates to your supply chain relationships? For instance, are the environmental, political, and social standards of your suppliers here in the States, for instance, the same as they are in Colombia, China, and elsewhere? And if not, why not?
Well, luckily I don't have to answer the why not. They are, and we audit them. And we audit them. We audit them from a human point of view. We audit them from a labor practices point of view. We audit them from a base material sourcing point of view. And in some cases, we do random surprise audits with those suppliers. And we have moved to a place where we are now taking our code of conduct, so now broader than the, how do I say, the frame of sourcing, even though it includes labor and human aspects, to get an acceptance from our suppliers. Difficult in many countries of the world to get certified agreement that they understand our code of conduct and are prepared to abide by it. Now, you can't audit all aspects of that, but to us that seemed like the next logical step to bring them within the framework of our company. And I would go back to the comment I made on our global supply chain and sourcing. We have over the years reduced the number of suppliers that we are sourcing from. So many of the cost benefits or savings that we today enjoy are the result of cost sharing and negotiated investment to structurally lower cost, not simply wage arbitrage by putting one bid against another bid. So we have reduced our supplier base and focused on strengthening the quality of the relationship and then, frankly, the quality of what we can demand from those suppliers. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, still though, isn't there some sort of wage arbitrage that's happening outsourcing?
Well, of course it is. Yes, of course it is. And in a global world, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We make a great degree of our products here in the United States. I'm saying that it is not a wage arbitration discussion in 2011 followed by a successive wage arbitrage discussion. When you move to an international sourcing strategy, by definition, there are wage differences around the world, but once we've made that decision, we stay with that decision and we continue to source and build the relationship over the time. And in many of these geographies, Eastern Europe would be a classic example, what may have been wage arbitrage 5 years ago is no longer there. But we're still there with a great quality workforce and now getting the efficiency from the capital investment we put in the facilities. So yes, there's one-time wage benefit. What I'm trying to suggest is we don't jump from one to the other. It's a strategic choice. Wage is a component of it, but distributing our strategic sourcing sites around the world, thinking of risk management, is another very important part of it as well.
Hi, my name is Annie, and I'm a freshman in the business school. I was just wondering how you've been able to manage balancing your personal life with such a demanding professional commitment throughout all the years that you've been working.
Okay, I guess. I guess it's, you have to decide what's important. And that changes as your life evolves. There are times when you don't have children and you can die, and there are times when you do have children and you have to be present at perhaps the important points in their life. So, of course, it's not easy in today's world. We all carry around at least one, if not three, portable devices, depending on how hooked you are on gizmos, and that keeps you pretty involved 24/7. And if we have an oil spill in Australia at 3 o'clock in the morning, guess who gets a phone call? So those things happen. I think what you have to do is to try and manage, if you will, that work-life relationship. I'm not sure there is such a thing as balance these days. It's how you integrate the two, and I think it's being thoughtful and choiceful about where you need to spend your time at specific points of time. So you may not be able to be at every family event, but you try not to be looking at the BlackBerry under the table, because otherwise you might as well not be there. So when you're there, be there, whether that's a business issue, a family issue, or some other community issue that's important to you. So I guess it's time management, and it's being disciplined about how you allocate the time. Time is, after all, the most precious resource.
So I have to ask for the chair's prerogative to ask one more question before I invite Dr. Knapp up here, and then we present you with our plaque of thanks. So I'm actually fascinated about how you guys have maintained such focus. I mean, it's really part of your message of maintaining an absolute focus on a core set of principles, a core set of products. When I imagine that the tyranny of capital markets are constantly pushing you guys to think about P&G and Unilever, and you could, of course, grow and grow and grow by acquisition, when it seems like you all have maintained such a clear focus in the face of what I'm sure is happening. I'm wondering, do you have to educate the people who are on the other line of the investor inquisition with you, or how does that work actually?
Investor debate, perhaps. The answer is yes. From an internal point of view, the reason we provide that focus is that we think that is reinforcing and building a culture for the long term. We want to be around another 200 years, and we think that's important to do that. I give one classic example. Before the subprime crisis, I can't tell you, in fact, it was probably every investor meeting I was at, the suggestion was we're a very underleveraged company. We take about 9% of our equity in debt. Our cash flow basically could cover the debt in just over a year. And the suggestion was, geez, interest rates are so low, why don't you guys leverage up and either do a big one-time dividend or make an acquisition just to grow? And the answer is, we're not in the business of making money from money. We're in the business of selling one tube of toothpaste at a time, and we're not in the business of making rash acquisitions. Acquisitions for us are a strategic process, strategic at one end, and as your grandmother always said, don't pay too much at the other end. And we all know how many companies have been destroyed by imprudent acquisitions. And we received criticism during that period. You can rest assured, when the day came, nobody ever mentioned why we had not leveraged up. So I think you have to have principles, you have to communicate them effectively, and you have to stay true to them.
I mean, I have to say, for me, it's just such a beautiful and heartening part of the discussion, because typically when we think of sustainability and ethics, we think of it in relatively narrow terms. But you guys are thinking about sustainability in the face of immense pressure from capital markets, and in a sense, maintaining a mission that is a core mission that allows you to deliver on that good. And in a sense, it's a great story for market capitalization and for corporate sustainability. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So it's my pleasure to present you with this
Well, that's very kind.
commemorative plaque.
Thank you so much.
Your name and, of course, the Maxon lecture. So,
Lovely.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Once again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the wisdom.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
Good. Did we go here?